Rationalism. Spinoza. History of Psychology, Department of Psychology, California State University, Fresno. Professor Mike Bauman. Baruch Spinoza was a Jewish philosopher who lived in the Netherlands. He was ostracized by the rabbis in the temple for his view and was essentially excommunicated from Judaism. Now, Spinoza had some interesting views on the relationship of humans to the rest of the world. First of all, he believed that freedom results from understanding the causes of your behavior. If you understand why you do something, you can change it or you could free yourself from it. In terms of religion, Spinoza was a pantheist, and he believed that God was in everything. Therefore, understanding nature led to an understanding of God. Now, if this smacks of Aristotle to you, it does to me as well. You can see why he was a little bit out of step with the current views, which were the Neoplatonist views of most of the other empiricist and rationalist thinkers of his day. His pantheism was considered blasphemous because it didn't treat God the way literally God was treated in the Bible. Even though he believed in a broad view of God, that God was by nature in everything. Now, one of the most longest terms that we're going to deal with this semester is one of Spinoza's, and it's his notion of psychophysical double aspectism, which is a mouthful. And this is his attempt to unify the mind and the body into a unitary system. And he still had to explain the differences between the mind or the soul and the physical body. And it's something that other contemporaries to Spinoza had been working on and battling with for a long time, especially folks like René Descartes. So, he believed that the mind and the body are different aspects of a single substance. Different sides of it, if you would. He alternatively called that substance God or nature. And he said it's impossible to separate the mind and the body. And this makes perfect sense to us in modern times. Spinoza goes along and says anything that happens to the body is experienced by the mind. You have a cold, it affects how you think. You get into a really good mood, which we'll talk about how to change your mood when we get to William James and habits. Your body feels better. So you can't separate mind and body. They are inextricably linked. But Spinoza had to figure out how. So he believed that the mind and the body are different two aspects, two parts of the same thing. The mind and the body, according to Spinoza, are merely like two sides of a coin. The heads and the tails always go together, and unless you take the coin apart by cutting it up, the head always goes where the tail does, and vice versa. So this is how he explained the mind-body problem. Now, Spinoza had a master motive for humans, and that was self-preservation. And he believed that good and evil are the emotions of pleasure and pain. Pain being pleasure, evil being pain. He believed we had pleasure from clear ideas that had a clear purpose. Naturally, he's a philosopher. He's going to believe that thinking and rational, logical thinking is the most important thing that humans do. So let's look at these things in turn. Clear ideas are important for the mind's survival, remembering his master motive of self-preservation, because clear ideas lead to an understanding of causality or cause and effect. So we can figure out if we do something and what effect we get. If we know that and we don't like that outcome, we can change things. Furthermore, unclear ideas generally become overwhelmed by the passions, which was the term of that time for emotions, and the passions lead to feelings of weakness and vulnerability. So for Spinoza, in terms of self-preservation, a powerful or virtuous person acts out of understanding nature and the world. And again, being a religious guy, he believed in turn that the highest understanding is knowing God. Now, Spinoza went through and cataloged all of these as emotions. In turn, each one of those emotions have components of both pleasure and pain. He also believed emotions are linked to specific thoughts. And you might think something is pleasurable, someone else may not. I can wander around the hardware store for hours, and my wife's done in 5 minutes. She turns on the Real Housewives of any city on the TV at night. That causes me intense pain, and I run and hide to my office. So the thoughts can vary across individuals as well. Now, emotions get in the way of survival and are unclear. So when we're experiencing passions like rage or lust or something like that, we can in turn probably have a lower chance of survival. Well, how do we control that? How do we deal with this thing? According to Spinoza, we can control our passions by understanding them. Remember, early in our discussion of Spinoza's work, we talked about how important it was, in his opinion, that we understand relationships, and by that understanding of relationships in the world, we free ourselves. So if we understand what causes passion, if we understand what causes lust or greed or all of those emotions on that list that you saw previously, then you can control them. Now, for Spinoza, free will is an important concept. And for him, you can see it almost fits back with some of our post-Aristotelian philosophers. Freedom consists of being guided by the laws of one's own nature. You can almost take it back to Socrates. And free will is knowing yourself. If you are, for example, a procrastinator and you have deadlines, well, you have to learn to work towards the deadlines and free yourself from the pain and anxiety of waiting for the last minute to do a task, like maybe a module exam for the history of psych. But ultimately, he believed free will is an illusion because we're often ignorant of causation. We only make guesses about it. And then finally, for Spinoza, in terms of free will, evil is the result of inadequate understanding. If you don't understand cause and effect, you may do things for the wrong reason. So evil is just misunderstanding. It's not a tendency to do things wrong, just not having clear and distinct ideas about the world. So, That is the Rationalist Baruch Spinoza. We'll see you next time on the history of psychology. Bye now. This has been a We Have Couches video production. Copyright 2020, Professor Michael Botwin. All rights reserved.